Are you ready?
Let's go.
Now circling in the neutral zone.
Here's the pitch on the way. 36 yards for the win.
This.
Here comes a big chance. The shot
is
this the dagger.
The neutral zone.
Home run. Good.
This is as good as it gets.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca.
Now, here's your host, two-time Paralympian, Brock Richardson.
What's going on? It's time for another edition of The Neutral Zone. I am indeed your host, Brock Richardson. Coming up on today's show, we release another Paralympic Summit interview. This time we hear from Para-cyclist Alex Hayward, who recently qualified for the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. Plus, we update you on the Olympic Games as we sit here and do the recording, and we tell you about some history that could be made in Major League Baseball. And I'm going to throw a curveball at my panel and tell them in a little while about the horse show I was at and the weird experience that I had this week while being there. I'm joined by Josh Watson and Cam Jenkins. Here comes your headlines.
Neutral Zone headlines.
Save the date. Ontario Para Network, in collaboration with Variety Village and Parasport Ontario, will be hosting a 2024 Paralympic Games watch party. Join us on Saturday, September the 7th of 2024 at Variety Village for an exciting day of cheering on your incredible Paralympic athletes. Please follow the Ontario Para Network on all social media platforms for more details.
Checking in on the medal count for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games, Canada currently has 5 gold, 4 silver, and 8 bronze medals for a total of 17. Of note, 8 of these medals have come in the pool, with 3 gold, 2 silver, and 3 bronze medals being won. Congratulations to all the athletes, and we look forward to the unofficial second half of the Games.
One of the most impressive stories thus far through the Olympic Games is the Canadian women's soccer program, and this happened because before their quarterfinal game against Colombia, they got a verdict that told them that their 6-point sanction would be upheld and be kept on the board. They went out and played well, but unfortunately they were not able to continue through the quarterfinals as they got eliminated. For me, I think this penalty was a bit too steep. We'll talk about it in a bit. I just could not keep myself from putting this in the headlines. Those are your headlines for this week. And if you want to get a hold of us on social media, here's how you can do that.
And welcome back to the Neutral Zone broadcast booth.
Play ball!
We're set to get this ball game underway. The first pitch is brought to you by Brock Richardson's X account at Neutral Zone BR. First pitch and a strike. Hey gang, why not strike up a chat with Claire Buchanan from the Neutral Zone? Find her on X at Neutral Zone CB. There's a swing of the chopper out to second base, right at Claire as she picks up the ball, throws it over to the first base for a routine play.
Out!
And fans, there's nothing routine about connecting with Cam and Josh from the Neutral Zone at Neutral Zone Cam J and at J Watson 200. And the Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. Follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.
We're going to release another Paralympic Summit interview. Today we're going to speak with para-cyclist Alex Hayward. Please enjoy this interview.
So my name is Alex Hayward. I'm from Quispamsis, New Brunswick, and I'm a para-cyclist in the men's C3 category on the road and the track.
Awesome. Can we first start by talking about how you became involved in paracycling?
Absolutely. So my parasport career kind of starts in 2012. Growing up, I was a hockey player, and in 2012 I had a spinal cord injury during a hockey game, which left me paralyzed from the neck down. And luckily enough for me, I was able to walk out of the rehab center in 6 months but following the injury, I kind of felt this big void in my life that was sports and competing at a high level. And so pretty quickly got involved in wheelchair basketball, actually. I played wheelchair basketball for 8 years. I played on the junior national team in 2017. Bounced on and off the senior national team for a while doing an engineering degree at UNB in New Brunswick. And during the pandemic, I started using cycling as kind of a supplementary fitness for my basketball, because I was struggling to get access to gyms, and just kind of fell in love with it, and eventually got connected with Cycling Canada in 2022, and now we're here.
So from that injury, when we talk about hockey, I'm sure there was a moment where you thought sports might be done. What was the turning point where you realized during your recovery sports could still be a possibility in my life?
Oh, totally. I spent the better part of 2 months just, I spent a handful of weeks anyway, completely paralyzed from the neck down. So, like, to give you an idea, they put a bed for my dad in my rehab room so that he could come scratch my nose, because I was on morphine and my nose was really itchy and I couldn't scratch it myself. So obviously, kind of just being able to look around the room, my hopes of playing sports were quite low, but as the months went on and I started to gain a bit of function and things were progressing, I started kind of looking into it more and more and getting a little bit more excited about this idea of being able to do sports again. And then, once I got introduced to this whole world of parasports kind of through my recreational therapists and Parasport NB, it was like game on. I just needed to find a sport that I could pursue.
I think we all sort of take for granted, and I say this in not a joking manner at all, it's just the reality of what happens. I think we all take for granted the situation of, like, the simplicity that it seems to scratch your nose. Absolutely. And like the idea that, like, I can't even do that, let alone, playing sports at a high level. So thank you for, depicting what really happened, and, credit to your dad for just kind of sitting there with you and being like, I'll help you. And again, it's something that we take for granted, and how easy it seems to just scratch our nose and move forward. So very, very interesting indeed. Can you talk to me a little bit about the training that's involved in paracycling?
Yeah, so for me, it's depending on, the track event I focus on the most is about a 3.5 minute effort, and my road events are more like 2 hours. So depending on what we're focusing on or what's coming up, I guess, my weeks will vary from about 10 hours on the bike to, say, 18, which will be usually 2 to 3 workouts where things are very structured, and I'm aiming to do certain heart rates and certain power during my workouts in kind of an interval manner, and then a handful of just go out and ride for 2.5 hours, and then we usually do 2 to 3 weightlifting sessions within the week as well. So it greatly varies on what's coming up, but I'd say on average like 10 to 18 hours, say, of riding.
What's the biggest misnomer in paracycling that you run into when people talk to you about the sport?
I think so far the most interesting thing for me, coming from wheelchair basketball, having it be kind of this really popular sport that a lot of people are aware of, I think just the lack of awareness of paracycling at all is kind of interesting. I think most people don't realize that there are some people competing in paracycling that just ride a regular bike, which is quite common, right? There's a whole classification for that. In fact, there's 5 classifications of that. So I think there's more to paracycling than just hand cycling, I guess, would be the biggest one.
You've had a pretty successful season. You went to World Championships, won a couple of medals there. You went to the Para-Pan Am Games. You brought home double gold. How would you define your season as being successful?
Yeah, so 2023 started out pretty frustrating. I had some health issues and was kind of fighting injury, and I felt like I really wasn't headed in the right direction. Finally got all my ducks in a row before Para-Pan Ams, and then went 4 for 4 there. Came home with 2 gold medals, a silver medal, and a bronze medal, which was super exciting. That was kind of like my confirmation of that switching sports was the right move. And then I went to start this 2024 season. We were in Australia for our first World Cup, and came home with a gold and a silver. So it feels like a really good time to be kind of peaking. It's super motivating time to be doing really well, and I think for me, so far, I've been chasing this Paralympic dream for about 12 years now since I had my injury, and I think for that to be kind of in my sights now is like about as exciting as it gets.
Right. I think, the verification of whether you made the right decision and getting medals, that's pretty self-explanatory as to whether you made the right decision, which I find pretty cool. It's easy to sit on your morals and say, look, I've had a good season, I'm going to just rest on my success. And maybe this seems a bit like a funny question as we're headed into the Paralympic Games, but how do you motivate yourself to say, okay, I've had a good season, but we're not done, we're not at the end of the road yet?
I think there's, medals at Pan Ams and medals at a World Cup are super exciting, but there's so much more to be achieved for me in this sport, and I think being so new, I really feel like my kind of ceiling of I've far from plateaued is basically what I'm saying. So I think the most motivating part is to know that there's lots of progression to be made, and obviously lots of very exciting things to possibly achieve, and it's pretty easy to stay motivated that way for me.
And there was an announcement made recently by the Canadian Paralympic Committee that the Paralympians would be finally receiving equal funding for medals that they walk away with from the Paralympic Games. What's your reaction to that?
Well, for me, I think the money is super exciting, and it is what it is. But the more kind of important or exciting piece to me is what it all means. For us to be getting the same amount of money as the Olympians is kind of this massive step in the right direction to us being parallel and not below, which is kind of the ultimate goal, I think, when you talk Paralympics versus Olympics. At the end of the day, we just want it to more or less be viewed on the same playing field, I guess. And this feels like the biggest step in that direction we've had so far. So I think it's fantastic.
There's been a lot of discussion as to there should be back pay for those athletes who have been to the Paralympic Games, and maybe we should go a little bit backwards and give them a little bit of money and acknowledge them for their achievements. Where do you stand on that idea of there being back pay?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's obviously anyone who's won a medal at the Paralympics, I think that's a super huge achievement, and it's what everybody wants to do, but that goes to a Paralympics. And I think back pay is a great idea. I think it just becomes difficult probably in, how far back do you go and these kinds of things. And it makes me wonder if at the end of the day, what we're trying to do, I think, is move para sports forward. And I think there's probably a possibility that if we back pay everybody who's ever won a medal, then there's not enough money left for the people in the future. And I think that's maybe a step in the wrong direction. So I don't know. I think that's a tricky question with no right answer.
When you think of a day like today, we're at the Paralympic Summit. They've done this 2 years in a row. When you woke up this morning, what was your goal into getting things done here today?
Well, this is my first Paralympic Summit, and I think it's really my first big media day. I think just an opportunity to kind of share my story and just the opportunity to maybe get it out there to somebody who it'll help along the way is all you really ask for. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more so just about getting my story out there and hopefully helping someone along the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this. We greatly appreciate it. Let's hear again from our sponsor, the Ontario Para Network.
The Neutral Zone is sponsored by the Ontario Para Network. Their focus on the growth and development of wheelchair basketball, tennis, and rugby in Ontario.
I teased off the front of the show that I was going to describe to you guys my recent experience at a horse show with one of my nieces. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not necessarily to tell you how wonderful and great my niece is at horse riding and how it's always good to be there and good to be a part of it. But today there was something really strange that took place, and I wanted to get two other sports minds to see if it was just me that was like, what's going on here? So she is in a division where she can be part of young kids, youth, and adults. It's the youth mixed in with the AAA division, which is kind of the youth and then the higher end of the AAA division. So there's no age limit, and I should preface that there's no age limit, but they do have to be above the junior riders, which would be about 6 or so. So today she had 14 athletes competing with her, and it was a big group of athletes, and one of said athletes was also coaching a chunk of those athletes, and she was not only competing, but she was also coaching. She ended up winning all first place in this division today, and she's about 20. And again, the age is not the important piece in this. It's more about the action. So the discussion around our group and our barn was, should a coach be an athlete in the same division he or she is coaching? I'm curious your thoughts on this. Start with Cameron, and then we'll move straight over to Josh.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a problem being both a coach and athlete. You see it in plenty of sports, especially off the top of my head, baseball. You see people coaching teams as well as playing as well. Hasn't happened too often, but you do see that. So personally, I have no problem with it whatsoever if a person's a coach as well as playing.
I've been to these same horse shows, often with Brock and his niece. She is a very good little rider, I will say. I'm a bit surprised to hear about this, and unfortunately I didn't make it to today's show, but yeah, this surprises me a little bit. On the surface, I don't necessarily have a problem with a coach participating in the event. That's fine. I'm a little confused because I was under the impression that these divisions were set up based on ability or time And by ability, I mean more time on the horse rather than anything else. Like, you wouldn't want someone who's ridden for 20 years riding against somebody who's ridden for a year, for example. So that's how I thought the divisions were broken down, but evidently that doesn't seem to be the case. Without understanding why that coach would be competing in the same division, I don't really know what to say, but it does seem odd to me. Just because, as someone who coaches, you would expect them to win an event because they should know all of the skills involved. So maybe there's some context I'm missing there, but that's on the surface. I don't have a problem with it, but I'd like to dig deeper.
Yeah, so I think the important piece to note here is that this individual who was coaching and also an athlete, she was coaching individuals that she was subsequently competing against. So that's kind of where I have the challenge is it's like, okay, you want to be a coach and you want to compete at the event. Fair, that's fine. But I think where I had the issue was, yeah, but you're directly competing against athletes you are coaching.
Right.
So,
that feels weird to me too, Brock.
That's where I'm
like... What level
like,
of competition is this?
This is, so it's beginner, but it's also this particular show that we're talking about was beginner mixed with AAA. So AAA is like above the beginner, but they're not quite at the level of like making money. They're kind of above the beginner side and they're mixed in with the beginner because of numbers, but they're also AAA. And so you had the coach plus some of the riders also mixed in with each other.
Yeah, I have no problem with that because especially if she's coaching the beginners are just learning. So, and she's an experienced rider by the sounds of it. So why wouldn't she coach them? If we're talking at a bit higher level where she's directly competing with them and, there's money on the line and so on and so forth, then maybe that wouldn't be as good of a look because, is she coaching them to fail? But at this level of competition, it doesn't sound like that would happen at all, in my opinion.
Go ahead, Josh.
The way I've experienced these competitions is it feels like it's a way to get beginners used to the competition scene and circuit, which is fine. If it's because of the size of the competition and that's why the coach is up against his or her students, then okay, I guess. But I don't quite understand why there's not, like, why a coach would compete against their students. That feels weird to me. But
yeah, and there will be grievances filed from a few of the coaches, not just one, a few of them, because this isn't something that they feel should have been going on. I think where a lot of people landed was it's fine if you're a coach and you want to participate in said event, but you're coaching directly against, or you're coaching and competing against people you're coaching. So like for me, it's a total conflict of interest, and I understand there's not money on the line, there's not any of that, but there is fairness and there is a high level of competing expected in this division because you are sort of above the lead line, which means lead line means that you are being led by somebody with the horse. So they're not being led by individuals with the horse. So for me, I just kind of was like, I don't know. I didn't quite love the way that this was done. I know there was an individual who had his daughter in this event, and after the event he said, Well, I guess I'll invite you guys to the junior pickup basketball game that I'm hosting tomorrow. And oh, by the way, I'm inviting Michael Jordan to the game. I hope you're okay with that. And we kind of had a bit of a chuckle over this. And his point was that, this is the level to which that we are going. And one of you made the remark of, you should win the division because you are thus coaching the individuals that are in the group, not all of them, but some of them. And so you should be winning the division. And in fact, she did win the division, and we kind of all left and kind of went, this is interesting, because when we learned this, we kind of were like, oh, number 196 is probably going to win all three of these events. And sure enough, she did. And for the first time, and I've been to, oh goodness, probably 12 horse shows in 3 years. And for the first time, there were too many people in the division for ribbons. So it stopped at 6. And if you finished below 6, so 7 and beyond, you didn't receive a ribbon, which I thought, oh, okay, I guess the ribbons only go to 6 and that's it. And we move on. So very interesting day for sure.
Well, and I will say, I'm kind of glad to hear that there were more entrants than ribbons, because I wouldn't want, and I'll say this gently because I am marrying into her family, but I don't necessarily want your niece to get the impression that she shows up at a horse show and she gets a ribbon. Not that she feels that way, but you understand my point, I think. We need to get to a point societally, in my opinion, where you don't get a ribbon just for showing up. And I don't think that's how she views it. But this situation does feel very weird to me, because why are you competing against your students? What are you teaching them if you're going to go out and beat them and they're not going to have a chance to win? So that feels weird.
It sounds like they don't have enough people to put in proper divisions. So if you've been riding a horse for 10 to 20 years, you're in one group. And if you're, 1 to 10, you're in a different group, or, whatever the case is. But by the way Brock was describing it, it sounds like that they didn't have enough people to be able to divide up in different sections, and everyone just kind of competed against everyone else.
And that's fine. I can understand that. Cameron, you and I have been to throwing events where there's not enough people in a division to have a separate event, but you still, in many cases, you still got graded against people of your own ability. It feels here like this teacher was graded against the abilities of her students, and that doesn't make sense to me. But again, there's probably some kind of nuance or something that we're not privy to.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But
it
me,
definitely
it's
feels weird.
Yeah, like for me, I'm sure that there just weren't enough participants and enough to put them in different categories. And like when we compete, Josh, there are a bunch of different categories. And we might be the only one that is in our class, but we're just trying to beat our personal best. And I think that's what they teach us in parasports is, it's all about the PB. So
yeah, and we are also graded on a scale against each other to try and make it more fair. It doesn't seem like that was the case here, but that's just my thought.
I also think that there should have been. Now, understand, I'm not giving you any more information than I know or I don't, right? Because I walked away from this going, huh? This is like, and it wasn't just me that was puzzled. It was a bunch. But I will say this, in that there was the argument placed, well, if you're gonna have a coach involved in a division, why not just have the coach's division? Well, I think that's a stretch in and of itself, because you're not saying, okay, if you're a coach, you're going in this division. I think there has to be a happy medium. But I also asked around, or was listening around today, was there notice of this coach participating in this division? And the answer unequivocally was no mas. And so for me, that's the part that I was like, okay, you would expect that the coach would be at a higher skill level than everybody else because she's teaching.
Or put the coach on a horse that's never competed before so that there's a chance of the horse not performing well, because that's a factor in these judgments is how does the rider do versus
so many
how does
questions.
the horse do.
So many questions. Like, is she only coaching the first years, like first time on the horse, or within only a first year? Well, I would think that's okay.
So I should clarify. These individuals are beyond their first year of competing. So lead line would be somebody that's within their first 2 years of competing, and then beyond this would be like, so this division would be you've been on the horse longer than 2 years, and so
you're able to control it.
You're able to control. You're doing it on your own. So you are beyond the I don't know how to control a horse level, but you're not certainly at the level of somebody who's thus coaching and competing at the same time.
So who was she coaching? The 1-2, the leads, or whatever you had mentioned?
No, she was coaching the individuals that were in the division of you've been on the horse for at least 2 years and beyond, and she was in that group of people. She was in the group of 14 that we started discussing, which included my niece and others, and it was like, oh, okay, so you're coaching and competing at the same time. It very interesting optics in today's horse show for sure. It's just bizarre. I mean I said to somebody tongue in cheek today, I said, I should tell my father he should compete at the Paralympic Games because he's a coach, and that's where it is. But I mean, I was obvious.
But does he have a disability? No,
right? He does not. That's why I said tongue in cheek. But it's just, I think I was among some pretty frustrated individuals who felt that there was really no notice and there wasn't need for this. And again, the argument that I placed, we will move on from this, I do promise. The argument that I placed was, well, I don't know how you can go into a situation, you're far and away above skill level of any of these individuals because they're beyond 2 years of being on the horse. How do you go and coach your group of people of 3 or 4 and you go and win, and then you're expecting them to respect you as a coach when you just took away potential medal that they could have had for the day? This is just me on this one, but that's kind of my thought. Was like, you're going to go back next week and into your practices and you would have won a division that I would say, numbers or not, and I will go on record and say, numbers or not, this person had no business being in this competitive division. If she wasn't coaching, and let me be clear, if she wasn't coaching, I have no problem with it. This is where you would fit. She was in her 20s, which isn't relevant. This is where you would fit, whether you're competing against people half your age, a quarter of your age, whatever. It's the fact that you declared yourself as a coach and competed in the same division that you were coaching individuals, where I land and go, a bit of a problem there.
So, like, because she coaches, she shouldn't be allowed to do it? So then she's, like, banned from competitions? I don't think that's right either.
I think it's more the idea that you're competing against your students.
Yeah.
Personally. So maybe you have...
But wouldn't they look up to her? Because if she got the gold medal, they're like, oh, I want to strive to be you, and you're really good at it, and that's why I have you as a coach.
Or why am I going to compete if I'm going to lose to you?
Yeah, but eventually she's not going to be there, and other people will rise up and get better.
That's true. I suppose that is possible.
There are other divisions that you will see individuals coach a certain bunch of athletes, and then they will go on and be in different divisions that they would fit into and compete against like skilled individuals. I've just never seen it where you're coaching 3 or 4 athletes and then you get in the same ring and you're competing against them, and I just kind of was like, this is a problem. If you weren't coaching them and very openly admitting this is my athlete and these are my athletes, and then you directly competed underneath them, I think that's where most of people kind of landed on this. But I thought I'd bring it to the conversation table today, and I know from time to time said niece listens to the podcast, and so I thought I'm gonna bring this to today's podcast and talk about it and see where we land on this. Seems like we're kind of some in agreement and some not, but I think there's some information that we would need to know moving forward, and I will keep you posted on how the grievance goes over at this farm. But according to the coach or the coaches that are going to file these grievances, ain't going to go very far, because they're just going to go, well, she's within the rules and able to do it, so that's that. And some coaches feel that that's not where this should go. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk a little bit about the Olympic Games. I chatted about this in the headline, and for those of you that might have fast forwarded us and missed the headline, I'll go over this again. Canada soccer program really was the inspiration of, I would say, the first half of the competition. They came and they won their last game that they needed to win, Colombia, to get that +3 to negate their -6 points to move on to the quarterfinal. They then went on to the quarterfinal, played Germany, and lost in penalty kicks, and thus they were eliminated. Can we say that this was an inspiration, a positive thing? Can we view it this way, or is it really all result based? Start with Josh on this one.
I think it is a wonderful story that they were able to overcome all of this. I tend to be in agreement with you that it feels as if this was too harsh a punishment. And the reason it feels like too harsh a punishment isn't because I think Canada was unfairly charged or anything like that. It's quite clear and obvious that they were caught cheating. I just have trouble with the FIFA investigation, if you will, because it wasn't transparent. What I want to know is how many other teams are cheating. Because you can't tell me for 1 second that Canada just got this brilliant idea to use drones to spy on other teams. Like that's common sense. If you're going to try and spy on something, a drone might be a good idea. If I can come up with that idea, I'm pretty sure everybody else in the world can too. Which tells me that we weren't punished for cheating necessarily. We were punished for getting caught. And we were made an example of for getting caught. And that's where I have a problem, because I believe the team when it says, yes, the drone footage was taken, but it was never shown to the players. So I believe the players when they say we had no knowledge that this was going on, because things happen outside of your team that loosely of, but don't necessarily ever see. So from that standpoint, I think, take away the 3 points for beating New Zealand. Okay, fine. But you didn't need to take away 6, in my opinion. And I don't believe we should have been the only ones sanctioned, because I don't believe we were the only ones who were cheating. I just think we were the only ones who got caught.
And you can't sanction anyone else if you don't get caught. So if they have no evidence of other drones or spying or whatever, you can't punish somebody for something that you can't prove if you don't have any evidence. So Canada got caught, and if you're a criminal and you get caught, you're the one that's,
Yeah.
gonna go in the clinker, or the one that's gonna get suspended, or whatever the case is. Like, it's just like, if two people are doing illegal things, and let's do the example of driving on a highway. One person's doing 120 kilometers an hour, another one's doing 130. The 120 kilometer an hour car gets caught, and they're like, well, that guy was going even faster at 130 kilometers an hour. Why didn't you stop them? Well, they stopped the other guy because they were able to catch up to him and stop him. Like, you can't catch everybody, even if you do have the evidence that other car, is going faster. Unless you stop it, you can't do anything about it. So, but yeah, with the women's team, I think they were very resilient. It was nice to see that they went as far as they did. I would like to believe that they didn't know, but as reporters and other agencies are looking into things, and as Bev, the former head coach, she was talking about what's happened in the past with the old head coach, who is now part of the TFC organization, and that this has been going on for years. If that's true, I don't know. I just kind of hard to believe that the players didn't see any footage or didn't know about it at all. But that's just my opinion, and I don't see how they wouldn't have known in some shape or form.
I can understand that. I guess where I come from is my impression was that part of the 6-point deduction was for past behavior. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not the case. But punish for the current crime. Don't like that's like punishing me for the fact that my family is from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and our ancestors very well could have been slave owners back in the day. I mean, we weren't personally. So, like, how far back are we going to punish? And I'm sorry, I know that's not a great example, but it's the first one that popped into my brain. It just...
No, it was not. It was 6 points. So that's, the one game, and then they thought maybe another punishment of another 3 points.
Yeah.
But obviously they should have taken 9 points away, because the women were able to go pretty far. Even having a 6-point deduction, they were able to, make the playoffs. So
yeah,
the IOC should have taken all 9 points away, and then they wouldn't have gotten as far as they did. So,
but then if you took 9 points away, you might as well have told them to go home, because
right,
exactly.
If they
100%,
that's the point, that it's like, okay, either send them home, give them the one game punishment, if you will, but 2, but again, where I'm gonna get on Bev Priestman here, which was the former coach, is to go back and as Cameron mentioned, to go back and say, oh, the previous regime, John Herdman did this before, it was done before. That is exactly the example Cameron made about you getting caught speeding, and then you go, yeah, but that guy's going 10 kilometers faster than I was. It doesn't matter. You can't. You're the one caught with the crime, and so. This is what we're talking. I always get blown away by people who point at another offense and go, well, why was I caught if so and so's doing
that? Was going on. Yeah,
doesn't matter. The point is that you were caught, and so you're trying to get out of it. And so, Cameron, that's a great example of what's going on here. Is being on the 401 somewhere and speeding, and then turning to the cop and going, yeah, but the other guy's going faster. The cop's going to turn to you and say, I don't care. This is what we're dealing with now, and I'll get him later if I feel like it, or I'll radio to somebody else. None of your business. Moving on. And I think that's where I got even more offended, and I haven't been a Bev Priestman fan from the beginning of all this. And if you're not sure, go back and check last week's podcast, which I was very poignant at Bev Priestman. But when you make your statement and then you say, yeah, but it was being done in the other regime, I shake my head and just
that's
whatever.
An excuse.
Not trying to, exactly. Blaming it on somebody else and not taking ownership.
It's not my idea. I just found it this way. Yeah, right. Okay, come on now.
Yeah, and you didn't know? Okay, sure you didn't know.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where I land with Cameron is like, do I want to believe as a good Canadian that the athletes didn't know? Sure. Did they not know about this particular incident? Maybe, but
That's
if in
more
fact
plausible.
but if in fact it was going on for as long as it was,
Then they knew
said
it was a
going to be
tactic.
going on, then they knew it's a tactic, and so obviously you're gonna cover yourself up before you deal with it all. So I do think that it was a steep punishment. I would have been fine with the
The 3 points?
3-point deduction versus the 6, and that would have changed everything as well. And we can talk about chips and nuts and ifs and buts and do all that, and we'd all be having a party. But that would have changed it all as well, in that maybe things would have been different. But again, this is the punishment you were dealt with, so here's how it goes. I think it would have been a bit too far, though, to say, here's a 9-point sanction. Good luck. You're not getting out of the pool, because the best you could have done at that point was
taken away
0.
all the points you can earn.
And so just go home and be salty at that point.
I think, again, my issue with this whole thing is, okay, we've dealt with the Olympic scandal, but this is a problem outside of the Olympics too. And so now this has been brought to light. Somebody got caught doing this. So now who else is doing it? That's the next part I want to see, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, but they have to catch them. So that's the only way something else is going to be done, in my opinion.
Brought to my attention this week when we were going through this. What's the difference between, and I'm posing this as a question, what's the difference between tablet footage in a game that athletes have access to and drone footage? If they wanted footage, can't they just get it legally? Thoughts on this, Cameron?
I think tablet footage, I guess it depends on where those cameras are that you get the tablet footage from. If it's just, from the ground and you're getting it that way to see replays, or if it's just from the camera feed, then, maybe it's a different look at it compared to drone footage. But during the game, you can take a look at what they're doing, and but at a closed practice, that's completely different, because that's when they're getting everything together and doing their game plan and how they want to defend and how they want to go on offense. And so I think it's a lot different when you get practice footage compared to actual game footage. And apparently it's an advantage when you get practice footage.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I would say tablet footage is probably footage that has been obtained of game play or of open practices. Like, you can probably Google, Spain football practice or something, and probably find footage that's been released legally. Drone footage to me is, I put a drone in the air and I'm getting footage of your practice without your consent. So that to me is where I would draw that line. I can see, and I fully understand that, if something is closed, then you have no right to be obtaining it through any means. There's other ways of getting the information that you want.
I didn't want to lead you guys in my answer to this individual I was having a conversation, but my answer was very similar to what both of you said. The difference between tablet footage and drone footage is tablet footage likely is a public domain. If we're talking about a baseball game or a hockey game or a whatever, and they're looking at the last play, that's because it's a public domain that Sportsnet or TSN or NBC, if it's American or whatever, has the rights to it. So they're running those replays. You are not given consent to go with any footage to the best of my knowledge, or any means of getting footage, and saying, we're going to just record your practice that we know you're practicing to be ready for us, and that's just the way it's going to go. That's the difference. What they're watching on tablets or whatever they're using is a public replay. I mean, the image that popped in my mind as I was having this discussion, there are guys that come off the bench and, some guy between the bench for a TV product comes there and, has his tablet because he's watching the game, whatever, and who name the athletes looking over at the tablet going, oh, what did that look like? Do I have an argument with the official? Do whatever the case is. I think that's the difference there for sure. And I think you're just doing something that you know.
Both teams also know that that's being recorded. So
exactly. That's where the whole, the rights and restriction thing that you hear on every sporting event. This is a public domain of the Olympics, and you do not have the right to record or do anything like that with it. And so my question to that is, can I do that with my Rogers box that I am recording off of because I want to watch it? Can I, disclose that? I'm not writing the NHL or the Olympics to figure that out, but it is one of those questions of like, is recording it count in all this? Because that is so easily readily available to us that I don't know the truth, but I'm not reaching out to the NHL disclosing their copyright because I don't want to open that can of worms. But every time I hear it, that express written consent from whatever the league is for recording or disseminating thoughts and opinions from the broadcast, does that include recording? I don't know, and I don't know that I'll ever know.
Well, I think what that comes from is that if you tape it and then you sell it for money, that's where the problem comes in. If you just tape it, because everyone has a DVR and they don't have any restrictions on you taping it, if it's just for your own personal viewing pleasure, it's not a problem. It's a problem when you sell that footage, and that's what they're talking about.
Exactly. I agree with you there. It's did I record this game and then I'm going to show it to people who haven't seen it and charge them $5 to get into my living room and watch it. That's where the express written consent comes in, from what I've always understood.
That is fair, and I learned something new even on this podcast, and I it's not something that I was, gonna write, whatever league and say, am I allowed to do this? Because it's not that important. I have the ability to record,
tape away, Brock,
to tape away, whatever. But it's always been something for years that is, what is the rule here? So learn something new. Let's chat a little bit about the Olympics and the stuff that's been going on. Josh articulated the medal count, which we're not going to run over again, but curious from your guys' perspective, some of the highlights as we embark on the second half of the Olympic Games. Start with Josh.
Summer, summer, summer. Holy smokes, can this girl ever swim? I have been watching her races, and I think the coolest one for me was the 200-meter butterfly, the race that she and her mother both competed in. I just think it's so cool that they've both won that event. And I mean, she did it running away. Like, people weren't close, as I recall. It's incredible to think that this girl is 17 and like she goes and she competes at the Olympics, and then she gets to come home from the Olympics and probably a week later go to high school and be a senior or whatever level high school 17-year-olds are now. And like, I don't know how you're not like queen of your school, because that's just
probably
remarkable.
Is.
She probably is. You're right. But it's just remarkable to see her race. I've loved every second of it, and I'm not a swimming guy. I'm really not. But she has definitely captured my attention. Along with that, I think I'm looking ahead. I'm looking forward now that the athletics have started. I really want to see how that goes. I loved watching Ethan Katzberg compete yesterday in the hammer throw. I was telling us all before we signed on to do the show today, tell me you're 22 without telling me you're 22. You throw your best throw, your first throw out of the gates, and then you get 2 more qualifying throws to make sure that you get into the final round, and then you foul all 3 of your remaining throws because you just like, let's see where this goes. And your coach is trying to get you to focus and to be technical and all the rest of it, and you can just see that he doesn't care. He's like, nobody's beating me, come on, just let me win.
Yeah, for the Olympics, for me, I always like looking at the firsts, what people have done for the first time. So as Josh mentioned, Summer, she won 3 gold medals, and that's the first time that Canadian has done that in one Olympics. Ilya Karen won Canada's first ever Olympic medal in the 200-meter butterfly, which was nice. Then he followed that up with a bronze in the 100-meter butterfly. And I think it is the first time since the Olympic Summer Games since Montreal in 1976 that 2 Canadians shared the podium. So that's a first that I was interested in as well. Going back to the pool, Kyla Massey became the first Canadian swimmer to win individual medals at 3 different Olympic Games. Another first for Eleanor Harvey, first ever Olympic medal in fencing. I think kudos need to go out to that as well. Felix Auger Aliassime. Hopefully I pronounced. Thank you. And Gabby Dabrowski won bronze in the mixed doubles, and that's Canada's first other Olympic medal in that event. Judo, Krista Deguchi, first ever gold medal at Paris 2024, and that's the first ever medal for judo. And I could go on because there's a lot more of the firsts. But finally, I want to point out the rugby sevens. I think the Cinderella team, a lot of people were talking about the women's soccer, but I'm going with the rugby sevens if we're going with the Cinderella team, because they made it all the way to the gold medal game. And coming in, they ranked 5th. So for them to go as far as they did, and they upset France in the quarterfinals, and then a shocking victory against Australia in the semis, that would be I don't know, if the Jamaicans had a hockey team and them beating the Canadians, that's what an epic proportion that is when you're talking about the Canadian sevens, so or the rugby sevens rather. So just a few firsts, and that's what I always like looking at when I'm watching the Olympics is the firsts, and of course who gets a bunch of medals too. So.
On a side note, if you get the chance and you didn't see it, check out the haka that the New Zealand team did when they got their gold medals. Holy smokes. It's always cool to watch that.
Watch that, yeah.
I'm going to give you 2 examples, and one of them is not Canadian, but I'm going to give it anyways. Wyatt Sanford wins the first ever Canadian boxing medal, winning bronze, so that was pretty cool. I have to tell you, I've watched more boxing than I ever have in my life. Since the Olympics have been on, it was cool to kind of watch him do his thing and win a bronze medal. And again, as Cameron's aptly pointed out, be the first. I do love that. I'm also going to say Simone Biles, who is the United States gymnast, and she has won in total 6 gold medals for the United States in all of her Olympic Games. She becomes the most winningest United States of America individual who has won at the Olympic Games. If that's not a positive story, then I don't know what you're watching. And I know we should be banging the drum of Canadians, but I think we should be giving Simone Biles some love. Also, Novak Djokovic joins an elite company to have won the Golden Grand Slam, meaning that he's won all the Grand Slams up to this point, including the Olympics. He had an incredible event, and I just think that that's important to outline as well. So very, very good for the Olympics to be off to a good start. And Canada is going to play France in the quarterfinals for basketball. How far do you guys see this team going as we record this on a Monday as per normal? And the quarterfinals is Tuesday, Thursday, and then the final is Saturday. Start with Cameron.
I don't see why they can't go all the way to the final games. I've really been impressed with the basketball team, and I read before this started that they were one of the favorites to win it, and I was just like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't think of Canadian basketball for the men's program, when it comes to that, as far as being a favorite to get a medal. In Sydney in 2000, when Steve Nash was on there, I'm not sure if they got a medal or not. My memory doesn't go back to yesterday, let alone to 2000. So, I'm just amazed that basketball that they're playing, it's phenomenal. They're doing really well. They're a deep team, and that's what the experts kept talking about, that Canada has a deep team. And I don't see why they can't go all the way to the finals and get a gold or silver medal.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cameron. I think that they have a very good chance of going to the Olympic final. I will be interested to see what happens because, France is not going to be a slouch. France does have Victor Wembanyama. They do have, I'm sure, Rudy Gobert, who are both NBA caliber French players. So I'm quite sure that it is going to be a tough test. But I do believe that they do have the chance to go on to the final. And personally, I don't know how we can expect anyone other than the Americans to be in that gold medal final against them. So I would love to see another example of Canada-USA going for gold, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the path is going on a collision course towards Canada, United States, but I agree with you, Josh. I think that France will be a tough test, not only because of the players that you just outlined, and you did an excellent job at Victor Wembanyama's name. I've seen many broadcasters who try that name and do it terribly. So well done at that. But yeah, I think also the home crowd will be a factor there, and regardless of the skill level that exists with France, it's going to be a factor. But stay tuned. It's going to be like I said, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then we'll be back the following Tuesday, as we always are, to give you the rundown of the final things with the Olympics and how many medals we got and all those things. But that is the end of our show for this week. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm reading you just telling us that Canada made it to the quarterfinals in 2000 but did not get a medal.
That's
I read
right.
your
They lost
stat right?
to France 68-63. So it was a close game back in 2000, but yeah, they did lose.
Vive la France!
It's time to
come on now. We want them to lose. We want them to lose.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
It's time.
But back in 2000, you might as well congratulate them.
Exactly.
So vive la France! But now I don't know how to say in French. I hope the Canadians kick their A double dollar signs.
There we go.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's time to get some revenge from 24 years ago when most of these individuals were not even born, some of them babies, some of them whatever else might happen. But I will say this, Canada is the only team at the Olympic Games that has a full second unit of NBA players. So welcome to that little slice of information that you think, wow, we can field 10 guys that are all NBA experienced. So go Canada, go, as we end the program. And on that note, that is the end of our program for this week. I'd like to thank Cam Jenkins, Josh Watson. I'd also like to thank our technical producer, Mark Aflalo. Stay tuned for next week because you just never know what happens when you enter the neutral zone. Be safe, be well.
The Neutral Zone is brought to you by the Ontario Para Network. Connect with them at ON Para Network. follow them online at onpara.ca. Now that's a winning combination.